Now it's time to show you how to put the drag bars on your bike. Let's see, first of all you want to put a towel. I actually put 2 layers of towels over the tank if you do have the tank on the bike. That'll protect it in case you drop screws or you drop the bar on the bike. So make sure you protect that tank, and then let's get started. Okay, before we take the clutch lever off, make sure that the adjuster is all the way in this way, so there's as much free play as there's possible there. And then make sure that the slot on both the adjuster and the little barrel there are in line with each other. And then what we want to do is we want to pop that cable off. So what you do is I pull the clutch lever in like that, and then I pull really hard on the cable, and it'll allow you to rotate that out like that, and you can pop that cable out. Okay, first what we'll do is we'll take the clutch lever off. Before we do that, we want to unplug these 2 wires right here. Just pull those out, and when you put those back in, it doesn't matter which way they go. So take those out, and then we'll take these Allen screws off the back side here. And then what I do is I usually just keep I'll screw those back in there just so I don't lose them. And then go ahead and let that hang down, and we'll continue on here. Okay, next we'll take the switch housing off the left side here. There's a long screw on this side and one on the front over on this side. Go ahead and take those out. That's what they look like. And then just split these 2 housings apart. That'll come right off. And do me a favor and just put a little oil down on this switch before you put the screws back in there, just so it works a little better. These Hondas have a tendency to get really dry and sticky there, so go ahead and let those hang down there, put the screws back, and we'll continue on. Okay, a lot of people ask if we can save the original grips. If your grip's in really good shape, it's pretty simple to save them. What you do is you kind of just tap a screwdriver down in there to get a gap in here, and then you pour a little bit of paint thinner in there. And then kind of work it a little bit, and then go ahead and just keep pounding that screwdriver down in there further each time. And keep moving this, and pretty soon that grip will come off there. It's pretty simple. There you go. It'll slide right off. Okay, we're going to remove the brake lever. It's the same thing as the left side. Just go ahead and remove these 2 switch connectors here. They clip under the master cylinder there. And then remove the 2 screws and go ahead and let that just fall down there. Make sure it don't let it fall, just hang it down. Never let it fall. Okay, if you're not going to change your grips, you probably don't need to do this, but if you are, then it's best to loosen your cable adjuster all the way as so you get as much slop as you can in there. The way you do that is just run that jam nut that way as far as it'll go, and then run this big adjuster screw all the way that way too. You'll feel the throttle get more play as you do that. Run that all the way so you can get as much play as you possibly can. Okay, now we can go ahead and back the screws off. There's one in the front and one in the front on this other side here. They're both in the front. So what I did is I took the one out completely, and then I backed the other one off enough to where this will pop over the pinhole and slide. Or you can remove it. This housing will spread apart, but we won't be able to get this housing off until we take the bar off the clamps. So let's do that, and then I'll show you how to remove those clamps. Okay, there's little chrome caps that cover these Allen screws. Let's just go ahead and pop those off with a little teeny screwdriver. Just reach under there and they'll pry right off. And then let's go ahead and take these caps off. And be careful not to let the handlebar fall down there. And then once you get those off, you can move the handlebar that way, and the throttle will slide right off the end of the bar. Okay, and then one last thing. Let's go ahead and save this little rubber plastic keeper here. Let's slide that up and off the bar because we want to keep that for the next installation. Okay, next we're going to lay the bar out and mark the center line on it. Okay, you'll notice the unpainted side is to the right. This one says VLX. Don't panic. All the Hondas are drilled the same, so same as the VLX. Okay, what we'll do is we'll take that. We'll put a tape from the end of the bar. We'll put a little mark. I mark this at 18.5 inches. If it's the shorter bar, this is the long bar. If it's the shorter bar, you may want to go like 17 inches. And I put a little mark. Then I turn it around and do it the other way. And put a little mark. And then in between the 2 is the center line. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take a little piece of this rubber masking tape. It doesn't have to be absolutely perfect, but use either that or maybe electrical tape. You don't want to use masking tape because sometimes if it sits on there at all, it leaves a residue. So put a little tape on just on the center, and then we'll set them on the bike. Okay, if you're going to change and use the Avon grips that we sell, it's a little bit of a pain in the butt sometimes because we've been after them to change their throttle cam a little bit, and hopefully someday they'll change it. But in the meantime, what we have to do is we have to get as much slop in the cables as possible. So what we want to do first, we want to split the housings apart like that. Take the screws out, and then to get the throttle housing out, it's real easy. You just take the housing out like that, and then slide those cables off. And that'll come right out of there. Okay, it's really important that we get the right throttle cam on this bike. It'll never work. So anyway, it's the one on the left here. It's this one. This is the one you want to use. It's the one with the slot. So let's just get rid of this one, and then we'll go ahead and glue this on the throttle tube just like it shows in the instructions on the Avon grips. We'll go ahead and glue that on there. Okay, it doesn't matter which grips we use. We're going to have to remove this throttle housing from the aluminum housing here because we're going to have to redirect the throttle cable. So the way you do that is you just rotate that housing out of there like that, and then once you have it out, you can rotate the cables out. Pop those out, and then we'll continue on. Okay, next we're going to have to take this switch out. You just remove this screw, and then that switch should pop out this way. Okay, the switch is out. I put the screws back in so I don't lose them. And then I'm going to take these two adjusters off here. This one just unscrews, and that should release that cable out of there. And then we'll go ahead and undo that, and then we're going to have to twist that housing to get that off. Just like that. So go ahead and twist that off, and then we'll show you how to redirect these cables. Now you can go ahead and just bend this out lightly, just so you can get these cables and the wiring out of those loops. We have to get those out of there like that, so we can shove those through and then redirect them on the other side of the light here. Okay, now we want to shove these cables through one at a time. Just hold this plastic on this right side of me here, just so we can shove those cables through. And then when you feed them through here, make sure you don't snag a wire or something as you feed them through there. So there you have it, and then we're going to show you how to redirect those. Now that we've got the throttle cables on the left side of the bike there, what we want to do now is we're going to have to reroute our clutch cable. Now this is the clutch cable right here. Disconnect it from the wiring. It should be connected to the wiring with a wire tie. So go ahead and disconnect that from the wiring there. And what we're going to do is we're going to take this clutch cable and we're going to shove it through the other side of the bike so that it loops around the triple clamp a little differently. Otherwise it'll bundle up and leave a great big too much slack in the front of the clutch cable. So let me show you how to do that. Okay, the first thing we're going to do is just take the front of the cable and slide it through that way. And let's put it on the back side of the clamp here. Okay, we'll do that, and then next thing we're going to do is we're going to have to shove it through the opening ahead of the tanks to get it to the other side. So hold on. Okay, now what we're going to want to do is very carefully feed this, just loop that cable around like that, and let's just start sliding it through this hole up in the front of the forks there. Just feed it through the other side, keep it up to the top. And then make sure you don't hit this plastic and break it. And you might have the tank on your bike, so just kind of carefully feed that through there like that. Might be a little tricky at the last there. Make sure it doesn't catch the other side. And there you have it. Okay, what I did is I feed it through the top part of the opening here and have it exit the top part. Make sure it doesn't exit down below a wire or cable or something. We'll check out the other side. Okay, and there's the cable on the top of this big wire going into the wiring harness going into the headlights. So now I'm just going to go ahead and feed it up through this area here, and it'll end up on the right side of the headlight there. So go ahead and just run that through like that, and then we can go ahead and run that over to the clutch lever when we get a chance here. So there it is. Okay, now it's probably a good time to go ahead and bolt your drag bar in place. Go ahead and center the tape. And now just tighten these caps. You don't need to get them ridiculous right now, and then you probably want to leave the drag bar droop down just a little bit for now so we can get the throttle and stuff on there. Now we want to be careful too later on once we do get our switch housing on that doesn't swing to the right, and the switch housing might hit the tank if the bars are drooped too low, so be really careful on that. And then okay, if you'll notice the cables, here's the clutch cable here. It's on the right side now. It's underneath the two throttle cables. These are the throttle cables. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and do the throttle first, because that can be the real stinker. Hopefully this will go really well. Okay, if we're going to use the stock throttle from the Honda, then we'll go ahead and use this jam nut and go ahead and screw this back into the housing just like that. You want to make the threads about even with the top of the jam nut. Then make sure your cables are straight, not twisted. Okay, and then I'll be right back to show you how we'll do it if you use the Avon grip. Okay, if you're going to use the Avon grip, let's go ahead and remove this knurled captured nut there and take that off there, because we don't want to use that. We want to bury this thread into that throttle housing. So I'll show you how to do that. Okay, if you're going to use the Avon, you want to screw this in all the way as far as it'll go into that housing, and then you want it to be able to swivel still a little bit, but go in as far as you can, because that'll actually lay on top of the handlebar like that. So you want to make sure that this throttle will at least go up and down a little bit like that. But go in as far as you can to still have it swivel like that. Okay, now go ahead and run this one down all the way. And make sure you use pliers and run that all the way to where it locks, and then just back it out just a teeny bit so that this swivels. There again on your Avon especially, you need all that down all the way down in there to get as much play on these cables as you can get. And then one thing I didn't mention earlier is you can disconnect the switch or the wires from this cable. That's a lot easier to handle if those wires aren't hanging off from that. So, okay, we'll proceed. Now let's go ahead and hook our cables on. I'm going to try to do this while filming, so bear with me a little bit. But what I do is I hook that the cable on that side first, and this has to be done outside the housing like that. So basically you hook that one in there, and then you just have to kind of twist that one around and hook that one on, just like that. That wasn't too bad. And that's what you got there. And then what you need to do is you need to try to rotate that into the housing so that it'll fit in there. You have to. This is a little tricky because you have to kind of make sure the cables. And there you had it. Gosh, I lucked out on that one. Okay, that works good. Now, for some reason, if you're running the Avon, this is the Avon, and I got plenty of slop in there. So, but if there isn't enough slop, I'm going to go ahead and show you one other thing you can do. So, and then if this is the stock Honda, it should go right back in there and just no problem. So, go ahead and do that, and then I'll be right back. Okay, I'm going to show you this part of the, this is on the left side of the motorcycle, and this is where the throttle cable is hooked to the carburetor down there. Okay, you see how that works? Now, what you can do, if you can't get quite enough play in there, you can go ahead and adjust this this side right here. This is adjustable, and if you adjust this down all the way that way, then it'll give you more play in your throttle, and you may have to do that. And then, worst case, you can always run that jam nut down a ways, and you can actually pop this out of that housing, especially if you loosen this one a little bit, and then that'll free up this side to go ahead and install your throttle. And then you can always pop these two screws out here too, and that'll release this whole thing, and you can slide this whole thing that way, at least to hook your throttles up. So you may have to play with that a little bit too. Hopefully not. And then I actually went to extreme on this, and I took this jam nut here, and that was here, and I ran it down on this side. That way it allows more slop here. So that would be the worst case scenario, but hopefully yours won't be that bad. And these are kind of a pain. Like I say, we're trying to get with Avon to get them changed to the throttle tubes, but so far we haven't had much luck, and no one else really makes aftermarket throttle tubes for metric bikes. So the easiest way to go is just to stay with good old Honda stuff. And you can always go on like Bike Bandit or one of those websites and get the Honda brand stuff, and then that works a lot better. So anyway, there you have it. Let's go back and I'll show you how to set all this up on the throttle tube. Okay, now we want to hook this switch back onto the housing before we put the throttle on the bike. So now before you put the connect the wire, go ahead and make sure that the wire comes through here and it doesn't wrap around anything weird or anything. you want to have I have my cables above, and then the wire goes below like this, and then dash down in there. And then go ahead and, after you make sure on that, then go ahead and put your switch back in. There it is. What I did is I put this little screw in first, and then I put this one in after. It's a little bit of a bear. Make sure you don't break the wires, and it'll only kind of go one way with the wires on the opposite side of the throttle tube there, like that. So anyway, go ahead and screw that back in, and then after you do that, we'll be ready to install this throttle. Now I'm going to go ahead and throw the throttle housing onto the handlebar. You may want to droop the bar down a little bit if it won't quite make it, but it looks like this makes it just fine. So I'm going to very carefully put that whole housing over it like that. Slide that over like that. Okay, when you get to there, then we'll show you how to finish hooking that up. When you put the two halves of the switch housing together, make sure that there's a little pin that's in the bottom housing. Make sure that pin goes in the hole in the handlebar. That way it'll only rotate a little bit. It won't work at all unless you get that pin located in the handlebar. And then it's the longer screw in the front and the shorter in the back. And then before you snug this up, just make sure this works nice and smooth like that. Throttle works nice. It has a lot of play in it right now, but we're going to adjust that. So anyway, go ahead and snug these screws up a little bit. Don't get too carried away on those because they're just aluminum. Okay, now we can go ahead and put the switch housing on the left side there. Don't forget this little gray donut thing that goes on the front of the switch housing there too. And then you can sand the end of the bar off a little bit to get that to slide over it, because paint builds up a little bit on the end there. And then don't forget the pin in the bottom of the switch housing that has to go in the handlebar, so that'll locate your housing. And then if you'll notice how I ran the wires, okay, the wire just runs down here, and the clutch cable is here on top of it. So go ahead and do that, and then you can go ahead and fasten your clutch lever. Make sure when you do these two screws that you don't get too carried away with the torque on those, because you're just going into aluminum, and so don't over tighten those. You want it to not swivel and snug up good, but don't get too carried away because those could strip out. So do all that, and then I'll show you how to hook up the clutch cable, and we're getting closer. Okay, to hook up the clutch cable, you just make sure your adjuster's all the way in, just opposite what we did before. Just make sure that's all the way in. Hook your cable in the front like that, and then just go ahead and hook it on that little edge there. Then pull on your clutch cable, and really pull hard on that cable, and it'll pop into that little keeper there. Then we can go ahead and adjust this out to get the right amount of play. And again, you can see how the cable runs. It's actually on top of the throttle cables here. This thing's looking really nice. Okay, I think you can go ahead and hook up your brake now. There again, don't overly tighten these screws. Just snug them up to where this doesn't move, and then give them a little extra torque. But it's aluminum, so don't get too carried away. Make sure everything's snug. And you'll notice I ran the brake line down the side of the fork tube there a little bit. I put a wire tie right here. Kind of hold it in line with the way it comes out there. That looks real nice. And then you'll notice why I did the wires. I put a wire tie here and here and ran the wires along the bottom of the bar and then down through these loops. I did that on both sides. I'll go and show you the other side. I did the same thing here. Wires along the bottom here, kind of ran them down and through those loops and then down. Make sure everything's nice and clean and everything's hooked up. And then don't forget to hook up your wires here on the clutch side and the brake side over there. Make sure you hook those wires back up again. Otherwise you'll have no brake light, you won't be able to start the motor with the clutch in or out. So anyway, there you have it. I'm going to go ahead and put the left-hand brake grip on, and we'll be set. Okay, to install the Avon grip on the left side, you just slide the grip on and tighten these 3 set screws. That's really cool. I love that. And then if you're using a stock Honda, you'll have to either use grip cement, and you may want to check on the internet for good ones, or we've actually used double back tape and water before. I think that's what Avon uses on theirs, and it works quite well. So you may try that, but make sure it's sticky and it sticks really well once the water dries. Okay, and then make sure that all this stuff is tight, all the adjusters are snug and everything, and if you did remove these screws, make sure everything's put back nice and solid. You can see that play in there. Now if you get too much play in your throttle, that actually could jump off that pulley there. So that's why the free play is pretty important, to have the right amount on your throttle. And that's the clutch lever I'm talking about right there. Make sure that's hooked in there the way it's supposed to be right there. Okay, I think everything's hooked up. Once you get the bars positioned where you want them and you tighten these clamps, make sure that you have a little bit of gap on both sides of the risers there on the caps. Because if you have more gap on one, if you suck them down all the way on one side, then they won't clamp as tight. And we've actually had guys that say the bars will slip. So make sure there's a little bit of gap on each side when you tighten these up. And then the little dots go forward. And then you can put your little chrome caps back on when you get finished. And then one thing you want to do now, what's really important and for safety and everything else, is to make sure when you adjust your throttle that you have your adjuster here to get your free play out. You always want a little bit of play in there. You don't want too much to where at the bottom of the throttle where they go on the carburetor, that one might come off the housing there, but just a little bit of slop. And then turn the handlebars both ways. Turn them this way and this way, all the way, and make sure the throttle is the same, the play. And the same with the clutch. Make sure that your clutch play is the same when you turn them both directions. Turn it all the way one way and all the way the other. Make sure that that play is about the same, because it'll be real weird if you're turning real sharp and the clutch play is different. So that's about it. And then, like I say, go back, snug everything up, make sure everything's good, and then you should be ready to go. And then, one other thing, when you do mount your tank, if you haven't got it on right now, is watch real carefully as this handle comes over here, because it could hit the tank. So make sure it be, that doesn't droop down and hit the tank. You may have to adjust your bar up a little bit. So there you go. Let's go on to the next step.